Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG and welcome to another Cube Tuesdays. In today's episode, we're going over the March of the Machine Aftermath set review for Cube. I'm once again joined by my co-host James and we're going to be going over what we think about this set. For those unaware, me and James have started a podcast called Powerful Nothing. If you like Magic, and there's a high chance you do because you're watching this video, it might just be for you. Links will be down in the description below and there's an audio version along with some extra bonus bits that we cover in this week's episode, so do check it out, I think you might like it. But anyway, time for me to hand it over to me. Right, it's time to move on to our main topic of the day, the Cube set review for March of the Machine's Aftermath. We will be doing this in Wooburg order, and we're talking about all the cards that we think could see play or are worth discussing under the realm of Cube. If we don't talk about a card, it's probably because it's either too niche, even for me, or its power level isn't really there. And remember, we are comparing these to every Magic card ever printed when we're talking about these, so our expectations are quite high. James, before we get into the set, this is the first time that we've seen like a mini kind of follow-up set. I think these booster packs only have like 5 or 6 cards in them, something like that. It's a really small set of like 50 cards that kind of ties in and kind of supplements the main set. What do you think about that? Kind of, how do you feel about these in general?
Yeah, I'm all right with it. I'm generally fine with them trying new things. The one downside I see is that I don't play a ton of Standard, but one of the things I always liked about Standard is that I already know all the cards because I've already drafted with them. This set you can't draft with, and for me, the way Magic cards are categorized is there's the real Magic cards, which came from regular standard legal sets that I drafted with. And then there's fake Magic cards, which are all the ones in Commander decks
Those
or
are all the ones I like.
yeah. No, but, I mean they're all fine, but it's but I don't know what any of them do most of the time. So there are now the fake Magic cards in Standard in my way of categorizing Magic cards. But I'm aware that other ways of categorizing Magic cards are available, and I don't strongly object to this. I think it's fine. It's quite a small set, so it's not like it's going to be half a standard, you know. What was your take on it?
So it's taken me time to get used to like the Commander cards that are in booster packs and not in Commander product or not in like Commander sets. So in like set boosters and collector boosters in standard sets now, there are Commander cards that you can only get in there. I agree with the added level of complexity not being a bit tough on the brain, especially when I'm in theory someone who's meant to be able to talk about them with confidence on the internet. But yeah, in general, I'm always fine with more cards. If I don't like them, I can just ignore them. I've very much kind of got into that mindset where it's kind of like, if I don't like it, I don't need to worry about it. It's fine. The main downside that I've seen so far is this set I don't think has sold fantastically well. Like, booster boxes are coming down in price again because there's only like 50 cards in there. Like if ever there was a set where it was like buy the singles, it's this one because there are some very good cards in here, which we'll be going through in a bit. But there's a lot of kind of there are still uncommons in this set. I can't actually remember if there's commons in this set because there aren't really that many of them. But it has meant that kind of one card in particular, which we will get onto, Nissa Resurgent Animist, is so expensive already. I think it's like 30-40 like pounds, and the set's only been out for like 2 weeks, and like hopefully that will come down. But if not much of this set is open, that means it's going to be a really hard card to get hold of. And if it turns out to be good in standard, it doesn't really help the cost of standard because it's an expensive card that wasn't opened much. Like,
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that. There's it's a pretty low power level set, is the impression I've got. Which means, yeah, as I say, not much of it will be open, so the prices are gonna be pretty high for the powerful cards, which you say it does. And by powerful cards, I might mean powerful card. We will see.
I think there's one other. I'm quite hype. I don't think we'll do a top 5 with this set. As we've done with other set reviews, mainly because there's if we do a top 5, we're doing like a 10th of the set.
Yeah.
Ranking a 10th of the set. But yeah. There is one other card. Spoilers. I think I'm actually more excited by, and it was £1. So
Okay,
let's
nice.
go. But with that, James, do you want to take it away with our first card of the day?
Sure. So first up, we have Coppercoat Vanguard. It is 1 white for a 2/2 creature human soldier. And it has each other human you control gets +1/+0 and has ward 1. So ward, of course, being whenever it becomes target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter it unless they pay 1. Um, this is a fine humans payoff. It's not it's not like a tier 1 tribal payoff, but being at uncommon, I think this is pretty nice for Peasant Cube. There is, I think, a decent chunk of the humans tribal stuff at uncommon. So I think it can definitely see a lot of play there. I think you just have better ones most of the time. I mean, if you had a humans tribal deck, you would put this card in it. But I think when you're looking for cuts for your cube and you need to cut a humans tribal card, this might be the one you cut. What do you think?
I completely agree. This needs to go in a human tribal section. Um, Humans is probably actually the easiest tribe to make working cube because it goes across so many colors. Like I think a dedicated elf list is probably or a dedicated goblin list is probably stronger, but they go in less colors basically. What's nice about humans is that you kind of you can disperse it over all the 5 colors of your cube. There's enough there. The odd thing actually is I'm not sure I see this in a peasant cube because like the 2 main human payoffs that I've seen run is things like Champion of the Parish or Thalia's Lieutenant, which are both at rare. So I could see it more in like in a budget cube. I think in a budget environment, I think in a humans deck, I think it'll be quite good there. There is definitely a world where you kind of like you go turn 1 something like Kithian or Dauntless Bodyguard, turn 2 this, and then turn 3 like Adeline, which makes human tokens. Like that's quite scary. Like if you can combine this with things that are making human tokens, and I do think it could be quite strong.
Yeah, no, it has some upside for sure. I think I'd be a lot higher on it if it also got the ward 1. The fact that it just protects other creatures
Mhm.
means that people are going to tend to kill this first, so then don't actually pay that tax. And then obviously, like no buff on toughness means it doesn't really help against any sort of removal or just in combat with your creatures surviving.
No, that's fair. Yeah, no, yeah. I think it could be a role player in the right queue, but yeah, I think it might struggle to get there. Let's talk about our first blue card. This one's going to be an interesting one. So first up, we have Filter Out. It is 1 blue for an instant. Return all non-creature, non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So this is a bit of a difficult card to kind of work out where it goes. Like not hitting creatures is tough. Like a lot of places that will want to run a card like this, like a blue kind of like bouncy effect, will want to get rid of creatures. So it's a bit tricky. Like the fact it's an instant is very nice. The I'm sure there's something in like a pauper cube where you can make this work. The main thing I was thinking of, and I'm not sure if this is good, and I will throw this to you very swiftly, James, but in Powered Cube, is there a world where this is a second, and I will admit worse, paradoxical outcome?
Yeah, that's definitely the card I've seen it compared to. So generally, how you want to use paradoxical outcome in Powered Cube is in your Storm deck with a lot of 0 or 1 mana artifacts that tap for mana. Um, so you can tap them for mana, pick them up with your paradoxical outcome, replay them. You now have the mana back, and paradoxical outcome draws a card for each one you return. The thing about this is it doesn't draw you that card. It's like you could certainly construct turns where this was really good in that deck, where you go, I have 3 Mox and a Mana Vault. I tap them all for mana, pick them all up, replay them. My Storm count's now huge because I've both cast this spell and replayed my zeros. And now I can Brain Freeze you out, and I've drawn a bunch of cards. The thing is, paradoxical outcome also works when you're picking up 2 things because you need to draw some cards. It also, you can just go for it when you need to go for it, and you can try and draw into your payoffs. This requires you to be completely set up already, and the archetype of cards that's like, oh look, we're good with Moxen. It's like,
Yeah.
guys, everything's good with Moxen. This is not an achievement to be good with Moxen. 'Cause it doesn't do anything if you're just picking up random other zeros, right? Like you'll often see paradoxical outcome used to like pick up my Mishra's Wobble. Like picking up the bauble doesn't do anything, but you're getting a card at least. This doesn't give you that. So yeah, I'm pretty skeptical on this one. I think you can do better. I don't really think they're good fair applications. Not bouncing creatures means this isn't really great interaction. I guess if your opponent was on like a million planeswalkers, you could be like, I poured in this big bounce spell, but it doesn't seem great to me.
Yeah, in general, when the best case scenario is a sideboard card, that means it's not playable in cube. Just as a general golden rule, I think.
All right, next up we have the Soovan Drifter. It is 2 and a blue for a 2/4 creature shapeshifter with flying. As you may look at the top card of your library at any time, and at the beginning of each combat, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you reveal a creature card this way, the Soovan Drifter becomes a copy of that card until end of turn, except it has flying. I really like this card. I think this card's cool and exciting. I don't know how good it is yet, but I think I want to try and make it work. So obviously the dream here is that you're casting your brainstorm effects or whatever. You're manipulating the top of your library, maybe Sensei's Dividing Top, and you manage to go to combat with like an Eldrazi or a Gristlebrand or something on top of your library. You reveal that, attack, get your Annihilator trigger, draw your cards, whatever you're doing with it. And it kind of works like a mini sneak attack, except it was already in play. And has the buyout of it's a 3 mana 2/4 flyer. That's pretty good already. Just for text, you may look at the top card of your library at any time is actually also kind of underrated. If you just have fetch lands and stuff, the ability to just be like, I know the top card of my library is bad, I'm going to shuffle it away. Or I really want to draw the top card of my library, so I won't crack my fetch land this turn. And even just letting you plan your turn ahead a bit better is quite nice. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this one. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, I am too. This is the card I was talking about. This is probably the one I'm most excited for from the set, and it's currently super cheap. Hopefully, it stays that way for a bit longer. I have seen people are playing this in like Show and Tell and Legacy, I think, as just a way of.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's a format with 4 brainstorms, so they're putting big things on top of their library. Obviously, in those formats where you have the consistency with it, it's definitely better. Like I could see this just going into a deck that was already kind of Show and Tell esque, like a Show and Tell sneak attack style deck, or maybe even possibly just Reanimator. Like if you're in a slow, control-y Reanimator deck, this is perfectly fine at holding down the board against an aggro opponent until you get the big dumb thing on top of your library, and then it's kind of ready to go. The card that it kind of compares to most of me, like I don't know if you remember Arcane Artisan. We ran that in queue before. That's the 3 mana 0/3 that you can pay 3 and tap it to exile a card from your hand and put a token copy of the card you exiled into play. But then if the Arcane Artisan dies, you lose all the tokens that you've created. I think this is way better than that. I think 2/4 flyer, just the body wise, the drawback is nowhere near as much. The setup is more. It needs to be on top of your library rather than in your hand. But I still like that. The other thing as well is I've been kind of slowly tinkering with kind of like a blue-white top of the deck matters without going too much into miracles, because I do think there is a bit of a feel bad with miracles. Kind of like if you're not putting any work into it and you just draw the miracle naturally, it doesn't feel great. So yeah, you've mentioned like Brainstorm, like Jace the Mind Sculptor is already in cubes. I'd be kind of looking to run this kind of power level. Yeah, Sensei's Divining Top. Scroll Rack as well could be quite interesting, maybe as a way if you're actually trying to make the archetype work. Just having ways of doing it, and like this is a good reward for players who are doing that, as well as having some application into some other decks as well. So I think for that reason, I'm definitely going to be giving this a go. My copy has already arrived. I'll be probably putting it in for the next one.
Nice.
Cool. Right, so let's move on to our first black card. We have Ayara'S Oathsworn. It is 1 and a black for a 2/2 creature human knight with menace. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, if it has fewer than 4 +1/+1 counters on it, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then if it has exactly 4 +1/+1 counters on it, search your library for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle. So do you have mono black aggro in your cube? If so, I probably run this card. Like 2 mana, 2/2 menace. It's probably going to, like, if you're on the play, I think this is definitely getting in for damage, and then it becomes a 3/3 with menace, and you're probably happy with that. Um, that's the main use for this if you're being black and being aggressive. The tutor ability is interesting, but I'm not actually sure what you're getting with it. Like maybe if you're another color, you're kind of like at that point you're getting your Ember Cleave or something like that. Like it was mainly kind of like the things I could see wanting to tutor with this are ways of finishing off your opponent when in theory you've been aggressive, which leads me to believe like Rakdos kind of like getting your Fire Blast or getting like an Ember Cleave or even like a burn spell to finish them off. I'm not sure what there is in black that I want to be getting with an aggro deck, but that could be because I black aggro is tricky to work. Cards like this will help it, give us more of them. Maybe we can run less Carnophages and run run some 2023 cards instead. But what do you think, James? Where do you land on Ayara'S Oath Swan?
Yeah, I was kind of going to say it was unplayable, and then you said mono black aggro, and I was like, yeah, the bar is actually very, very low for that deck.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could kind of see it there. I think in terms of what you're getting, I like when you're getting it for free. A demonic tutor is kind of its own payoff, right? You get a threat, you get a removal spell, whatever you need. But maybe even this is the deck that can play like Grey Merchant or something. You can get that. That would be pretty cool.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, yeah.
Having said that, I don't think you're going to demonic tutor very often with this card. You can. It's really a lot of turns. I think though it does have outs to like. Well, what if you can put more counters on it and you speed that up? Maybe there's like a green black counters deck for like some menace because it like you like to have keywords on your creatures when you're buffing them, and then you can like get this demonic tutor really quickly if like maybe even turn after you play it. The issue of that though is you still do need to be able to connect, and yeah, the setup cost is pretty high. If you're trying to use it in that way, and yeah, as just a threat, it's underwhelming. But better than Carnophage, so maybe mono black. Cool. Next up, we have Markov Baron. It is 2 and a black for a 2/2 creature vampire noble at uncommon. It has Convoke, Lifelink. Other vampires you control get +1/+1, and Madness for 2 and a black. That's a lot of abilities, and they're all really good. 3 mana is normally more than you want to pay for the lords, but having Convoke is really nice here because Vampire does tend to have quite a lot of tokens. So it's often gonna, you're often gonna be able to go like turn 3 Vampire, tap like my remaining land and that Vampire and one more Vampire and play this. And that's really, really mana efficient. That lets you snowball really well. Madness is also great here. Vampires almost always has a madness theme in the deck. So if you're doing Vampire Tribal in your cube, I think madness is going to work out great. I think this is a really good lord, actually. Like obviously, it's not like every cube has a Vampire Tribal deck in it, and that's the only time you would want this card. But I think if you do, it's an auto include. I think it's one of the best lords.
Yeah, same. I really like it. I'm assuming as well you can convoke it when you madness it as well. If you're discarding it, you can.
Yes, yeah, that works how you want.
That's really nice. And yeah, as you were saying, like most of the madness cards printed in the last, like, I was going to say 3 years, but in this, the the second Innistrad set was probably about 6-7 years ago now. Yeah, since then most of the madness cards have been on vampires. We also had the Angie Commander deck. Um, yeah, the other card as well, which Falconwrath Gorger. I don't know if you know what that does. It's a single red for a 2/1 that gives all vampires you control madness.
That's cool.
Like there's definitely a deck that exists. I think in maybe you could do it in peasant, but definitely kind of like a synergistic unpowered cube. Yeah, red black vampires with a madness sub theme. I think it could be quite cool.
Okay, that's nice. The other nice thing about Madness is you can kind of give this card flash. If you if you have a way to discard at instant speed, your Mantis trigger goes on the stack, you can just cast it whenever that discard trigger happens. And having a Flash Lord is pretty strong if you can get some blowouts in combat or against removal or whatever.
Seems cool. I do quite like this card, but it's finding the right place for this. But I kind of want to play whatever cube this is in, actually. So,
Mm.
all right. Next up, we have Urborg Scavengers. It is 2 and a black for a 2/2 creature spirit. Whenever Urborg Scavengers enter the battlefield or attacks, exile target card from a graveyard and put a +1 counter on it. Urborg Scavengers has flying as long as a card exiled with it has flying. The same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. So I actually quite like this effect. So in my cube already, I'm running Graveyard Trespasser. I like that card. That does a similar thing. That's 3 mana for a 3/3 with Ward, discard a card, and a similar style of enter the battlefield or attack, exile a card from a graveyard. That one does flip into a 4/4 werewolf, but importantly, that means you have to worry about daybound, nightbound. So the fact that come this effectively comes in as a 3/3. I think like you're playing this when there's already something in the graveyard. That does mean it could get stuck in your hand, but I think most of the time, but by the time this comes out, you're going to be removing something. It comes down as a 3/3. Um, the ceiling of this card is also way higher. Like you could, there are very real creatures in cubes. Like there should not be bad creatures. There will be like it will pick up 1 or 2 of these abilities over the course of the game if it survives. Especially flying. Flying does not seem that hard to get at all. If you can bring this down on, say, like turn 3/4, exile exile something from their graveyard, this becomes a 3/3 flyer. I think you are very happy, as well as also, more importantly, not having to run daybound, nightbound in your cube. That is the other thing that I am very up for. But yeah, I quite like this card actually, and this one might be worth a test. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I could kind of get on board with this being stronger than Graveyard Trespasser. I've not been massively impressed by Graveyard Trespasser, but yeah, this is certainly a more interesting card. And yeah, absolutely, let's get rid of everything that says Dayband on it, as far as I am concerned. Um, yeah, I think so. This ability is strong. The keyword ability. I think you're not meant to go massively out of your way for it. Is the one thing I'd say.
No, yeah, it's an upside. Yeah.
Exactly. This is like a nice when you get it thing. It's not like Soul Flayer where you're trying to massively build around it and be like, oh, look at my Hexproof Indestructible Double Strike Lifelink dude. But it is a nice thing to have. Also, if you have like hasters, you can go like play it. It's a 3/3 haste, attack with it straight away. It's a 4/4. It has flying or whatever you can exile. But obviously, early in the game, they probably don't have a lot in the graveyard, and it's just going to be a guy that grows, but that's fine. I don't think this is like going to be the most powerful 3-drop in any cube, but it is like it's a bit of incidental graveyard hate. It's and it's just a body that grows. I think it's fine. I don't think it's exciting really as on power level, but I think it's a nice card.
No, I think it's probably a needed role player. Like in mine, I added Graveyard Trespasser because as much as I love the graveyard in all of its forms, um, it was getting a bit out of hand in my queue. So I do think like if your black session is kind of anywhere kind of control-y or death and taxes-y, I do think you need something like that just to give it an answer. The interesting fact with this is that it does say exile target card. It gets the ability if it's a creature, but it can exile any card when you play it. So like things like Echo of Eons or something like that, or something or like a spell with flashback could be quite good. Like even like a Faithless Looting, you would snap that off just to make this a 3/3, and then you would start attacking with it, that kind of thing. Like I think this card will end up playing better than it looks, if I'm honest. But yeah, it is a interesting and fine card that will hopefully be less than 50p. So we can test it, we can try it. If it's not good, we can throw it away. If it's good, then hooray, we found a new toy.
Nice. Yeah, I think I do like it against those like value graveyard things. I think these effects are pretty hard to line up against like Reanimator specifically because
Yeah.
they tend to put the fatty in the graveyard and bring it back straight away. You don't get like a combat step to exile it.
But if you get rid of the Grizzlebrand, it does have flying and lifelink.
That is true.
That's quite good.
Mm?
We love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Right, do you want to take it away with our first green card?
Cool. Yeah. Next up, we've got Nissa, Resurgent Animist. It is 2 and a green for a 3/3 legendary creature elf scout, and it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, add 1 mana of any color. The ability well known from Lotus Cobra. But there's more. Then, if this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an elf or an elemental card. Put that card in your hand and the rest on the bottom in a random order. This is a cool card. I think it's landfall, make a mana of any color is a pretty powerful ability. I think this is worse than Lotus Cobra on balance because Lotus Cobra can lead to those super explosive starts. Where you make back, you can get to a 5-drop on turn 2 of fetch land, for example. This just being a 3-drop, that ceiling's a lot lower, like in terms of explosiveness, but it does stuff later, which Lotus Cobra doesn't necessarily. And it is worth noting, it's not just the first time you get a mana, the second time you get a card. So you get your mana every time. You just only get the card the second time. So yeah, if you play this and next time you play a fetch land, it is 2 mana and the card, and that's pretty good. You do need to make sure you have enough of those elf and elemental cards, and ideally you'd want them not to just be a bunch of Landwar elves, because drawing into a bunch of Landwar elves later isn't that good. You want them to be like cards that matter from like turn 4 onwards. But yeah, I think it's a fine card. I could see trying it. I don't think it's like mind-blowingly powerful.
This isn't a mono green card. Like, yeah, as you're like unless you are specifically supporting elf tribal, this doesn't, like, most of the elves in your cube are going to be small mana dorks. When this gets better, yeah, is if the elementals in your pool are like the pitch elementals or like Omnath. Like, this seems kind of broken in a deck with Omnath. Like, play this on turn 3, play a fetch land on turn 4, go get your Omnath. That seems pretty strong. And like the pitch elementals are very broken. I've done a whole video on them on the YouTube channel, but yeah, I think the primary reason why this card is quite pricey now because people are trying to put it in decks where they're going to get Omnath. Like, this is their 3-drop, goes and gets them either like Solitude or something like that, or it gets them Omnath. Like either of those. Like, if those are your 2 hits in your deck, you're kind of happy with both of them.
Yeah, that's nice. I think Oracle of Muldiah is another really nice one
Oh,
for
nice.
a few purposes. It's going to go really well in the same deck. Because you do want the ability to play multiple lands turn, which again you don't generally do in mono green. You don't need fetch lands; you're one color. Yeah, no, I think you want to be able to play multiple lands in a turn, and it's also worth noting with this card, it's very easy to look at this card and think, oh, it just makes mana every turn. If you don't have a land drop, it doesn't make you a mana. It's it can be a real downside here as well.
Yeah. I think that also that goes into what you're saying as why, just as the base level for that ability, the Cobra is better because it comes down earlier when you're more likely to have a land in hand. It coming down later means you're less likely to have that land. Yeah, but yeah, if this as you mentioned earlier, like, this is the card that has suffered by this being such a small set the most because it's wildly expensive, and I think it's probably unfortunately going to stay that way until it sees a reprint, which God knows when that will be, or unless another card shoots up and people start opening more of the product. But yeah, with Lord of the Rings like a month away at time of recording, it doesn't look good for the prices of Nissa, Resurgent, Animist, but we can hope anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, next up we have Tranquil Thrillback. It is 2 and a green for a 3/3 creature dinosaur. When Tranquil Thrillback enters the battlefield, you may pay green up to 3 times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, choose up to that many. So you can choose from destroy target artifact or enchantment, exile target player's graveyard, or you gain 4 life. So, at the base level job for me of being a Reclamation Sage, it is worse than a Reclamation Sage. The extra mana, the 4 mana on ETB to destroy an artifact or enchantment isn't great. But the added utility of this card I do think is quite good. Like, yes, you do have to pay for it, but the top 2, the destroy target artifact or enchantment or the exile target player's graveyard, are both relevant. Like those are both things that I can see you wanting to be doing in Cube. The gain for life isn't that relevant until it is very relevant. Like this can come down and stabilize you against the aggro opponent. Like you play this on turn 4, if you've just been beaten down all turn. It's a 3/3. It'll probably trade with like a Rabble Master, or it'll block a monkey, that kind of thing, and gain you for life. It probably won't get there in the highest power cubes, but that utility is quite nice. I do quite like it. I do think it could be quite interesting. What do you think, James?
Yeah, so I think it's one of those cards that is flexible, but just each mode is a little bit underrate. And it's quite hard, honestly, for more than one of these modes to be good at any one time. Like how many spots do you care about killing a graveyard and you care about disenchanting stuff? It comes up, but it's generally going to be like one of them.
Phyrexian Dragon Engine's a messed up card.
Yeah, that's true. I was a lot more into it when I thought you could choose the same mode multiple times and just like gain 16. But yeah, as it is, I think it's just a bit too expensive for what it's offering. 4 mana is just not an acceptable amount to pay for your Reclamation Sage.
No, I completely agree.
Cool. Next up we have Feast of the Victorious Dead. Great card name. It is white and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if one or more creatures died this turn, you gain that much life and distribute that many +1/+1 counters among creatures you control. This is a card that obviously needs loads of setup. It's for an Aristocrats deck. The way I'm seeing this is it's kind of like a Blood Artist, but it doesn't kill you right away. And I don't know that I need that. Like, I don't know, life gain is so much worse than anything that kills your opponent. And like, yeah, the counters are nice, but it's kind of tough how you use them because it's in your end step. So your opponent's about to untap and get a turn. If you put them all on one thing, they can just kill it. If you spread them out a bit more, maybe they probably have good blocks, right? I kind of think this is a worse Blood Artist, and there's already a bunch of Blood Artists, and they're not amazing. This just seems like loads of setup costs, and if I'm paying the setup costs, I want to kill them, and this doesn't do that right away.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think this is for the cube that is running Aristocrats and also life gain. Like it's one that is kind of maybe doing Aristocrats in like red black, and then is doing life gain in white black, which I think you do see in a lot of in budget cubes or lower powered cubes, just because those are archetypes printed into a lot of sets. Like those are basically the default mechanics in like core sets and stuff. So I do think like in those maybe, but yeah, yeah. When you compare it to Blood Artist, it's like yeah, just run Blood Artist, run something better in your guild slot. I do agree.
Yep. I think the issue I'd have in life gain is just your opponent can choose whether they trade or not. You know, they don't need to give you this trigger. They can untap, kill it on their turn. It only triggers on your end step, so you don't get a trigger if they kill stuff on their turn.
No, that's fair. All right, let's move on to our first Boros card of the day. We have Nahiri Forged in Fury. It is 4 red and a white for a 5/4 legendary creature, Core Artificer. It has affinity for equipment, which means this spell costs 1 less to cast for each equipment that you control. And whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn, and you may cast equipment spells this way without paying their mana costs. So I do think this is an interesting card. The setup could be a bit much because this really wants you to probably have at least 2 bits of equipment already in play. That way you're then paying 4 mana for a 5/4. That's good. Like that's a solid rate. Nahiri doesn't have to be the equipped creature that's attacking to get the trigger, which is nice. So you can already have something in play Nahiri, attack with it, you get your value straight away. So that is card advantage in Boros. We do like that. That is nice. If we flip an equipment, then we're very happy. Obviously, the dream scenario is we flip like a Batterskull or a Cauldron Complete, then we're very, very happy. But yeah, realistically, this wants a number of equipment in play, equipped to a creature ready to attack when you play it. That is a lot of hoops to jump through when you can just play Batterskull or Cauldron Complete or something like that. I think every set I put a Boros Equipment Matters card on this list and make you talk about it, James. For that, I apologize. At some point, we will get there.
That's all right. I'm sure I've got an audio clip of me somewhere soapboxing about Equipment Matters cards. I could replay it. I think I think Equipment Matters stuff plays a lot better when it's like you need an equipment for it to work. Like, you attack with an equipped creature and get a thing. That stuff works fine. But affinity for equipment is kind of tricky
Yeah.
because you just can't put like 15 pieces of equipment in a deck. You won't have a functional deck. You won't have any creatures to equip them to. Often the equipment that does play well for this stuff is like living weapons and the reconfigures, which are both creatures and equipments. Because that does let you just up your total equipment count. But like, you're not. It's a disaster if you pay for 6 for this. I don't think you're happy at 5. I don't think you're that happy at 4, and you're just not gonna have 3 pieces of equipment to play in the early game to get it cheaper than that. Yeah, the ability is good, but it's I don't think this is enough of a payoff really. I think you need Equipment Matters cards that are good when you have 1 equipment. So I think for that reason I'd be pretty low on this card. It's like by all means like try it, it'll do some stuff, but
Mhm.
I'd start off being skeptical.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think and admittedly, I said this in the last one we did. We need another set with reconfigure or like a modern masters level one with like reconfigure. I know technically we did just have there was Famiridon in all B1, but none of those was super playable. So maybe we need 5 more sets before we get
Yeah,
there.
yeah, very possibly.
Yeah. All right, cool. Do you want to take it away with our next Boros card?
Yeah. So next up, this is a cool one actually. We have Nahiri's Resolve. It is 3 a red and a white for an enchantment. It has creatures you control get +1/+0 and have haste. Pretty good start. At the beginning of your end step, exile any number of non-token artifacts and/or creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of your next upkeep. This is a kind of exciting card. I think it's going to be too slow for like really powerful cubes, but there's a lot of value here. If you have like even 1 or 2 things with good ETBs going, and you just get to trigger those every single turn for the rest of the game, that's going to be really tough for your opponent to grind through if you're getting any sort of board presence or even just card advantage out of that. This reminds me of the Yorion decks where you'd be combining Yorion with like something that then flickers out the Yorion and they just go in and out at the beginning of each end step. And you kind of get to just do that off 1 card, which is pretty cool. The downside is, though, and it is a big downside, is that because you exile the creatures on your end step and they come back on your upkeep, they are very much not there to block and keep you alive. And staying alive is exactly what you need to do when you've played a 5-mana do nothing enchantment. In fact, in terms of keeping you alive, it might be worse than do nothing. It might be 5-mana get rid of my blocker for the turn. So you've got to be conscious of that. But it's worth noting you don't like have to exile everything. You can be like, exile my guy with a good ETB and my artifact for good ETB, keep my 2 blockers, and that's fine. And obviously the +1/+0 and haste means you do get to attack with them when they come back on your upkeep. Yeah, I think this is a pretty cool card. It's interesting having the blink payoff in Boros. It's normally more of a blue-white theme, but there's a lot of value here. The ceiling's really high on this card, I think, if you're like trying to play a value-y blink game.
Yeah, definitely. No, I completely agree. Yeah, I've had actually, I still kind of technically have a blink as a very small subtype in my Azuria section. So we've got like Soul Herder, Yorion, and Ephemerate is kind of like the little bit of value cards. And like there's plenty of good white creatures with ETBs. But I was looking at what red ones have ETBs. That's kind of for me that was kind of the interesting part. So like the ones I got that I either play now or have played in the past. So we've got like Caves of Chaos Adventurer, the initiative creature. Like this with initiative creatures seems kind of dumb because if you have multiple initiative creatures, they will come in give the initiative a bunch of times. We like that. Fury is in a lot of cubes.
That's great. Yeah.
Yep. And Inferno Titan also seemed.
Titan's very good. You do kind of want the cheap ones though, right? Because you want this to be coming down and
Yes.
doing something right away.
And that's kind of where I think this just being a straight Boros card might fall down a little bit. Like, admittedly, my red section is not, and most red sections in Cube will not be made to take use out of a Blink archetype. And that's primarily because most of the abilities on kind of red creatures are like attack abilities, kind of like your Rebel Masters, or maybe they're like a deal damage ability with like Felden, that kind of stuff. It's more like combat based rather than enter the battlefield based.
Yeah, that's true. I think
That's where you get your
Seasoned
values.
Pyromancer is a really good one here, right? The ETB discard 2 cards or 2, yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
And it is extremely splashable. It's the other
Mhm.
thing I'd say.
No, that's true. And actually, I guess like Zealous Conscripts could be quite fun with this.
Oh, that's spicy. Yeah,
Just a
yeah.
value way of just stealing something every turn. But that could
Yeah,
be
yeah.
quite good.
The
Yeah, yeah.
problem I have with Zealous Conscripts with this is that it's going to kill my opponent far too quickly, and I just want to accumulate value over 10 turns. It's going to be like, oh, but they're dead. I was having so much fun.
No, nice.
No, it seems cool.
No, fair. But yeah, let's move on to our first 3-color card of the day, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
We have Narset Enlightened Exile. It is 1 blue, red, and a white for a 3/4 legendary creature, human monk. It has the static ability of creatures you control have prowess, and whenever Narset Enlightened Exile attacks, exile target non-creature, non-land card with a mana value less than Narset's power from a graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So I like this card. I think it's cool, but just right off the bat, it's always worth saying that 3-color cards are always slightly harder to justify than monocolor cards or 2-colored cards because it requires an additional requirement from your deck, even with how good mana in cubes are nowadays. Like yes, this is splashable, but it's still something to consider. The effect is very good though. Like your whole board getting prowess is strong. It does ask you to have a board state and then spells to cast afterwards, which might be where this falls down in higher powered cubes. But there's just a lot of good spells in cube, and being able to copy them whenever this attacks is very good. Um, there's probably more powerful things you can do with this, with like your your power 9 cards, like your ancestral recalls and the like in higher power level cubes. But where I could see this actually seeing play and being good is like if there's a cube with kind of like a Feather the Redeemed deck in Boros, where you're kind of getting value for targeting your own creatures with like pump spells that kind of draw you cards and churn your way through your deck and pump up your whole board, sort of like a blitz style of deck. I think in that this could be very good and is something that I want to try at some point. I do like the blitz style of decks. And that deck it's probably fine splashing blue for some card draw anyway. What do you think, James? Is there like a more of an application than just kind of like a beat down browsy thing?
Yeah, I think this card's cool. The place I was thinking it maybe fits best is there's a lot of Young Pyromancer type effects available now, right? We have the OG Young Pyromancer, Third Path Iconoclast, Saheeli, Monastery Mentor. Probably some more I'm forgetting about. This is fantastic with those cards because you already want to be casting a bunch of cantrips and stuff in those decks anyway, and then this really just puts it into overdrive. Like everyone knows how powerful the difference between Monastery Mentor and Young Pyromancer is when all those tokens have prowess. And if you have this with Monastery Mentor, the tokens have prowess twice, and you're going to kill them really quickly. And it gives you a spell on the way in if you have mana left over. This isn't to say this card's great. Like it's obviously pretty high setup. It's 4 mana, and it doesn't want to be like the last spell you cast that turn. You want to have some mana left, so you can cast a thing you exile. And it's ideally those decks want to be some cheap creatures and then everything else is spells, so it's diluting that a little bit. But I think the ceiling is there. Like if you're going wide with pyromancery stuff, I think this is like another way you can get paid off of that. It can be a little bit clunky, but I think there's some power level. I think it's an interesting card.
No, that's cool. No, I like that. Actually, getting people to play the spells deck in my cube, I quite like. Like the the Pyromancer thing has never really got there in mine. Um, People just take the good blue cards and the good red cards and do other things with them. But I like there being an incentive to do that. That seems cool for me.
Nice.
Nice. Do you want to take our only Rakdos card of the day?
Sure. So in Rakdos, we have Obnixilis Captive Kingpin. It is 2 black and a red for a 4/3 legendary creature demon. Has flying and trample. A 4/3 flying trample, pretty good start. And whenever one or more opponents each lose exactly 1 life, put a +1/+1 counter on Obnixilis Captive Kingpin. Exile the top card of your library till your next end step. You may play that card. So there's one exciting application of this card that's hard to set up, and it could do some fair stuff. We'll do the fair stuff first. 4/3 flying trample for 4 is that's just a lot. That's like you wouldn't play that, but it's not completely embarrassing until it gets lightning bolted. You'll be embarrassed about that. The ability is the downside is it doesn't enable this at all itself. It will hit you for 4, not 1. So it won't trigger its own ability. I think what we're meant to be doing with that ability in the quote unquote fair application is like Blood Artist, Mayhem Devil. If we're doing that Rakdos sacrifice thing, there's a lot of ways that they do tend to be here's a bunch of instances of your opponent losing exactly 1 life. And see, they'll each put a counter on Obnixilis. So it kind of almost like doubles up on the damage because with flying and trample, they're not going to be able to block very much of that damage. So that's kind of cool. It is a 4-drop, so how much that deck wants it is a question worth asking. But but it could do some powerful stuff there, even if it's a bit high setup. The combo application, which is probably bad, is this does work with All Will Be One from its namesake set, in fact, Phyrexia All Will Be One, which was the 3 red enchantment. Whenever you put a counter on a creature, deal 1 to something. So if you have both these cards, whenever your opponent loses life, you'll put a counter on Obnixilis, that will trigger the All Be One, that will deal them another damage, that will trigger Obnixilis again, and your opponent will die. The downside, of course, is that it's a bit of a clunky combo, and neither of those cards, or All Be One, is going to be hard to make a lot of use of outside of a combo. But I think it's definitely interesting, and like having half of your combo just be an enchantment that can sit there. Enchantment's a lot harder to kill than creatures. That's quite nice. Having said that, I don't think you want to be jamming that combo into every cube by any means. But yeah, I think maybe just doing this with some Blood Artists and whatnot is playable. No, it's great, but it does some stuff, I think.
No, I think that's fair. I think it's Aristocrats, or I guess a deck where you're making a lot of 1/1s and attacking with them, like more Warmash style things. But that is going to end up an Aristocrat deck just because of how cubes are. The main thing with this is, so one of the reasons I've cut Aristocrats from my cube recently is because all the creatures kind of suck. Like you're spending a lot of 2 mana for 0/1s or 4 mana for 2/2s, that kind of thing. Like this is a creature that can kill people. Like yes, this is a Aristocrat card that does not make tokens, it does not sacrifice things, and it does not drain them out. So it does not do any of the things that an Aristocrat card actually needs to do. But it will hit people in the face, which I think might be like, if it gets in, like I could see like if I was still running Aristocrats, I could see myself trying this just as a way of actually giving the deck a bit more juice, because I personally think that in higher powered level cubes, Aristocrats has just fallen off recently. There hasn't been enough powerful cards printed for it compared to other things for it to kind of keep up. This isn't like a juiced up Blood Artist or anything like that. It is a different way of taking it that kind of goes in the deck that's already there. It's probably very Win-More-y, but I'm kind of in for that at this point.
Yeah, I think it is worth noting it doesn't quite work how you want it to with the attacking with tokens thing. Like if you attack them with 3/1/1s, they are gonna lose 3 life, and this ability isn't gonna trigger.
Oh, it's not one. Yes, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 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 which is unfortunate. It would be a lot better if it worked that way, but
So it is just aristocrats then. That's the only shell it can really realistically go into.
I think so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it will come up, I guess, that you can, like, if the board's clear, you attack them with 1 token because you get a card and a counter, and that's pretty good.
Or a 1/1 with double strike and this. Ooh.
Oof, game.
Ooh, that's value.
GG's.
There we go. Nice. Cool. All right, let's move on to our only Gruul card of the day. We have Samut, Vizier of Naktamun. It is 1 red and a green for a 2/3 legendary creature, human warrior cleric, with first strike, vigilance, haste, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, if that creature enters the battlefield this turn, draw a card. So the more I think about this card, the more I actually like it. In these colors, a lot of things naturally have haste. Like I'm thinking about the Gruul deck I played recently, and like apart from Mana Dorks, basically everything had haste, or they were Rebel Master cards that make tokens that are come in tapped and attacking. So they'd come in that turn, they will trigger this. If you're on the play and you play this on turn 2 because of a Mana Dork, I think you're in a supremely good position and you're just beating down your opponent and getting more value from it. Like it's not a complicated card. It's a 3 mana Gruul thing that you want to be turning sideways and will give you a bit of card draw. But I quite like this.
I think it's all right. It's You can definitely construct scenarios where it's going to be really good. The issue I have with it is that your opponent does get to factor this in when they decide their blocks, right? They can, they can trade with a creature that has haste, and the ones that entered before this turn they can take a hit from. And it's not like a lot of the time you're not going to be able to connect with this the turn you play it. It's only a 2/3 on turn 3. Um, and like if you're not getting your card right away out of this, then it's a lot less exciting, right? Um, but I think, yeah, I could definitely see draws where it lines up great. And it's really nice with like questing beast type stuff that's really hard to block. But I just can't worry that it's a bit win more. It's
No, that's fair.
rule card that is good when my 4-drop gets to connect is like, I don't know if that's where I want to be. Um, I feel like I'd rather have like just another standalone threat instead of that.
No, that's fair. And I guess at 3 you are comparing it then to all the Rebel Master cards as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And no, yeah, that's completely fair. And yeah, I would put this below most Rebel Master cards. All right, do you want to take it away with our final card of the day?
Certainly will. Finally, we have Khan Legacy Reforged. The Khan is a 5 colorless mana for a star legendary artifact creature golem. Khan Legacy Reforged's power and toughness are each equal to the greatest mana value amongst artifacts you control. So notably, it is, of course, an artifact creature itself, so it's always a 5/5 at worst. And then it has, at the beginning of your upkeep, add a colorless mana for each artifact you control. This mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells, and until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So this mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells is a kind of weird line of text. It was, of course, what was on the Power Stones from a couple of sets ago. So this is basically you can use them to cast artifacts, or you can use them to pay for abilities. So 5 mana 5/5 artifact creature is like, I mean, you can't just play that, but it's you workshop it out. It's quite nice. And then, but this ability is like, you could see scenarios where it would be great, but it's a lot needs to line up, right? Because you don't get it straight away. You don't get it the next turn. You need to already have a bunch of artifacts and have more expensive artifacts specifically to cast. Like a lot of the big mana decks, like you'll have some top end artifacts like your mid battle spheres and whatnot, but you'll also have top end cards that are like, Khan, 7 mana Khan, or Ugin or even like casting an upheaval, and it doesn't work great with them. I suppose it does kind of work with upheaval because you have to replay your artifacts post upheaval, but I think we can just do better than this at 5. Like, do we want this over like Lodestone Golem, for example? At 4 drop seems like kind of a more powerful effect. Like, it's gonna feel like that leads to winning more games. I don't know. The making it bigger thing is like barely matters, right? Like, sure, we play Battle Ball, it's like a 7 then instead of a 5/5, and that's fine. But I don't think that's really what we're about.
I think just the fact you get the mana the following turn just makes it way too slow. Also, artifacts are probably an artifact creature is probably the easiest thing to kill in a cube.
Yeah, that's true.
Just it dies to all creature removal and just the random artifact removal as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't give you any value, any ETBs. Like, no ETB, there's no taxing effect. It does just die.
Would you prefer this? It was slightly cheaper, but like had the construct text, so like its power and toughness were equal to the number of artifacts you control, rather than like the standard 5/5 or has the potential of getting bigger. Just because constructs have been really really good recently, they're just getting better and better.
Constructs have been really good, but I think a part of that is because they all come in. Like, I don't want to spend 5 mana just to make a construct, you know?
Yeah,
I'm expecting more from that. Like Urza is 4 mana, you get a construct and a bunch of mana back, and a mana sink. Like, they do get better in multiples, but like I think actually if you compare this card to like the 4 mana Karn Planeswalker, um, it's a really embarrassing comparison for this card, right? That like makes multiple constructs for 4 mana, which are probably going to be bigger than this guy,
yeah, quite probably.
and has card advantage built in, and it's less mana. But for me, it's not looking good for Card Legacy Reforged.
No, definitely this Khan isn't it. The last one wasn't either. I don't think we even spoke about the Khan from Brothers War because
Oh yeah, that
it
card
wasn't very
sucked.
good. Yeah, Rip Khan, give us a good Khan. Come on now.
Give the people what they want.
Right, thank you all very much for watching. Do like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And do remember that a link to Powerful Nothing is down in the description below. Check it out, I think you might like it. But until next time, I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.